I think the Prime Minister is in the thick of it here. Genuinely, I think there's a big problem. He's apologised for believing Lord Mandelson's claims over his links to Jeffrey Epstein, even though this was essentially public knowledge by this point. Bookies now say the Prime Minister is odds on to go this year. Will he go by 4 o'clock, though, this afternoon? We like to set a 4 p.m. deadline if we can. Let's have a listen to what he said this morning.
I want to say this. I am sorry. Sorry for what was done to you. Sorry that so many people with power failed you. Sorry for having believed Mandelson's lies and appointed him. And sorry that even now you're forced to watch this story unfold in public once again.
Keir Starmer speaking this morning, but will he be gone by 4 o'clock? Let's speak with Benedict Spence, political commentator, and Sebastian Salek, Labour Councillor, Waltham Forest, and commentator as well. Afternoon to you both. Sebastian, 4 p.m. is the deadline. Will he be gone?
Oh, unlikely, Ian. It would rely on the papers having been published. I think that's the real flashpoint that we're looking for next in this story. And then the big question is, what's in them? If it turns out that Starmer's been lying all along, he knew everything, yes, OK, he's going to be toast pretty quickly. I would suspect, though, that the fault would lie with Mandelson, who, look, has done awful things. He's lied to his country, he's lied to his party. Yeah. And
Keir Starmer knew about it.
Yeah, well, this is it. This is it. This is what we will find out when those papers...
Well, I can tell you now, he did know about it, because I knew about it, so he must have known
that's it. He knew as much as the rest of us. The question is, did he know about all of the stuff around the Brown era and all of the new stuff?
He knew that he stayed at a paedophile's house while he was essentially Deputy Prime Minister and the business there. So he knew that, and that would be enough to surely preclude you from getting the job as ambassador. So Starmer's got to go, right?
What I'm curious about, Ian, is why this clamour didn't happen at the time. I mean, look, when he was appointed, there was a lot of harking back to his resignations during the Blair and Brown years. There wasn't so much focus on what we all knew about Epstein.
Some people hadn't joined the dots, perhaps, but of course, you know, you might think that Downing Street Security Services would have done. Benedict Spence. Look, I'd love him to be gone by 4. I doubt whether he will. What's your overall take on this? Sebastian says, let's wait for the papers.
Well, he's not going to be gone by 4. He probably won't even be gone this week, to be honest. I think there's every chance he might end up surviving well into this year. But that's simply through intransigence. There's nothing else. He's, you know, managed to ride out quite a lot of scandals already up to this point, quite a lot of misfortune. I think when you'll know that he's in real trouble is when he pushes Morgan McSweeney first. And Morgan McSweeney will be the one that's pushed first, because especially when it was leaked, of course, that Starmer actually preferred the idea of having George Osborne as ambassador to the United States, which, you know, is not exactly a ringing endorsement of his judgment either, but still, it was put out there that that's the guy that he really wanted rather than Mandelson. And it was McSweeney who pushed for Mandelson. Well, right there, that's the name on the death certificate. That's the man who's going to be made to take the rap for this. But once the advisor, once the key guy is gone, well, then it is just a matter of time. Everybody's sort of gone to great lengths to say that McSweeney is the architect of this administration, that he's the brains behind it. Well, once he's gone, then apparently there are no brains behind it. But it will also have to go back to what you're saying. It doesn't matter, really, whether or not the papers are published, what it is that the Prime Minister says he knew, whether or not that can be corroborated. The fact of the matter is, all this boils down to, the Prime Minister said he didn't know that Mandelson was friends with Epstein to the same degree that everybody else in the English-speaking world seems to have known. And then the question is about judgment. Should you have made somebody who was friends with a convicted paedophile ambassador to the United States? Most people at the time said probably not. It's when you've got Labour MPs, backbench MPs, also saying, no, this was a mistake, that you know he's toast.
And that's the issue, Sebastian, isn't it? That there are people on your side that are saying he should go. I'm assuming you would like him to stay.
I'd like him to stay as Prime Minister because I think we need continuity. We've had this discussion before. I think it's in the best interests of the country, whatever party you support, to have a Prime Minister who sticks around for more than 2 or 3 years. God knows, I can't remember the last one who did that.
Well, just because of that desire. I mean, does that mean you would ignore anything because of your desire for continuity?
Of course not. And as I say, look, if the papers come out and it turns out that Starmer has been lying to us all, then of course his position is untenable. You're not completely bulletproof as Prime Minister, but we do need somebody who can enact an agenda, and that's what we haven't had since Cameron.
But
really.
it seems, Benedict's quite right. Morgan McSweeney is likely to go. Would you concur with that? I mean, let's remember Morgan McSweeney, right-hand man to Keir Starmer, but very, very close to Peter Mandelson. And arguably, and as Benedict said, there were other candidates, including the former Chancellor George Osborne, which we understand Mr. Starmer preferred. But somehow McSweeney managed to shoehorn his best friend in there, and Mandelson got the job. Now, that doesn't say much about Mr. Starmer's judgment, does it, if he was swayed by an underling?
I don't think it's necessarily being swayed. You make these decisions as a team, and just because you start out with one candidate who among us has never gone through a hiring process where we've decided on one person and ended up with another one. Now, look, I don't want to defend Mandelson at all because I don't think he's worth defending. But he was chosen for a job that he was, by all accounts, very good at. So in terms of selection for the job, they probably made a decent choice. The problem is all the baggage that came with him and the awful, awful stuff he's attached to.
But it's that one bit, Benedict Spence, of staying at Epstein's house, June 2009, in his apartment in New York. At the same time, Epstein's serving an 18-month prison sentence for soliciting prostitution of a minor that's involved underage girls, some as young as 14. At that specific moment, Mr. Mandelson was the business secretary. He was also the first Secretary of State, which is the most senior position, of course, next to the Prime Minister. It is beyond belief. It's impossible that no one knew where he was staying at that time. So, number 10, the Cabinet Office, no, we don't know where Peter's gone. He told us he was off to the State. I mean, it would be ludicrous that no one knew. So that was a matter of record somewhere.
Oh, absolutely. And the simple fact of the matter is you have to sort of take at face value what has been put out into the public realm. Do you believe Peter Mandelson? No. Do we therefore believe that the Prime Minister, who would have had access, or should have had access rather, to substantially more information than the average member of the public, do you believe it when he says that he took it at face value? You have to say, well, either he's blisteringly stupid or he's lying. There's only two ways about it, ultimately, and both of which I think preclude you from being able to continue on as Prime Minister. We already know that all of this information was known to the security services, even if it wasn't all known to the press, and that does include the British security services. So if there was nobody in MI5 or MI6 saying to the Prime Minister, listen here, actually there's a little bit you might want to know that might come out. If that didn't happen, obviously that's a breakdown in communications, but I sincerely doubt that it didn't happen, in which case they had that information and they decided not to act on it. We've also had Gordon Brown come out and say that he raised his concerns with number 10 and he was ignored. Lord Glassman has come out and said he raised his concerns with number 10. He also did it in public. He did it on the BBC and he was told to be quiet. None of this stacks up, and as I say, it goes back to it. Either the Prime Minister is lying or covering for somebody in his administration who will therefore have to go, or he's a half-wit. I don't really care which one it is. That person shouldn't be Prime Minister.
Yeah. And Sebastian, when Mandelson was looking around the situation's vacant columns of his local newspaper and saw this ambassador job pop up, he would have thought, OK, I'm going to need to obviously do my best to convince the Prime Minister that I'm good at this. There's this Epstein thing, so I'll run over that. And the fundamental question, of course, was what was the relationship with him? Mr. Starmer said yesterday that he was aware that he had a relationship with him, and he was aware that that carried on after we knew a bit more about his kind of criminal activity, etc. So the fact that the Prime Minister knew that, or this specific date that I keep talking about, June 2009, how do you imagine then, if you are sort of defending Starmer, how do you imagine that bit of it, that specific bit of information, would not have been on Starmer's desk? And if it was, what do you think the thought process would have been that would have led the Prime Minister to ignore it?
Well, the suggestion from number 10 is that Mandelson just wasn't honest during his vetting process.
But even if he wasn't, they knew about this. They knew he was there at that apartment at the same time that Epstein was in jail. So they knew that bit. What possible answer could Mandelson have given to somehow convince them that there was nothing to see here, even though he was staying in a paedophile's house?
The reality is that I don't know and none of us know, and that's why it's so important that we see these papers, because we have to know the truth. Transparency is the key word here, and that's why I'm holding off making any judgments until we see those, we see what really went down, and I will make a pretty firm decision either way, whether this Prime Minister should carry on or should leave, based on the outcome of those papers, because that is where the truth lies here.
Yeah, Benedict, I wonder if it was a case of schmoozing here, where Mandelson had said, yep, I was there. You've got no idea how many other people were there. Most of them are in Donald Trump's cabinet right now, including Donald Trump himself. Look, this was just a thing. We all knew him. We all hung around. We didn't like him. We just stayed there because he had information that might be useful to us. Do you imagine it was something like that?
This has always been one of the arguments, isn't it, that ultimately Mr. Epstein was able to insert himself into many echelons of various different societies and make himself important, and therefore he was somebody that you couldn't do without. I don't believe that for a second. I think that he certainly did make himself important, but you're under absolutely no obligations to go along with the game. I also think, given that this was already becoming a scandal, it was already a massive scandal before Mandelson was made ambassador to the United States, it wasn't a good enough argument, because as much as anything else, as much as you say, you know, and it is true that there are many figures within the Republican hierarchy who are embroiled in this, it was also one of the key campaigning points of the Trump administration. We're going to release the Epstein files. It's going to come out in the wash sooner or later. Even if it was selective, that was always going to increase the danger that something like this came out. So to have just gone along with it and assumed, oh, nothing could possibly come of it, for the Starmer administration is just colossally stupid.
Yeah, absolutely. On that point, Benedict, thank you very much indeed. Benedict Spence, political commentator, Sebastian Salek, Labour councillor for Waltham Forest. Thank you, guys. Great to have you both on. Thoughts